In this video, I'll be going over exactly step by step how I booked this exact seat on this very specific airplane 100% by accident using credit cards, points, and miles, and how you can do this too. This made the value of my redemption insanely more valuable than I could have ever planned for and opened up the opportunity to knowing how to replicate this for many, many more potential routes in the future. This video is going to be broken out into 3 parts. The first is for absolute beginners who may have heard of, hey, Sally down the street traveled for free using credit cards, points, and miles. That's a total scam and a sham, and it's not possible. So that's part 1. Part 2 is going to be what I call the intermediate level of how to do this not just reasonably easily, but a little more advanced technique of, okay, hey, you can do this, and I'll show you exactly step by step. Step 3 being kind of what I call the expert level, where when I get there, I'll get deeper into it because there's specific ways to get specific seats on specific airplanes with specific airlines and their partners. So we'll get into all of that. And with that, let's get straight into it. Starting off, there's a lot of different types of credit cards. You got ones that earn absolutely nothing when it comes to something you get back. They could be maybe there for a specific use case, for example, credit repair cards or credit builder cards, or those that are just absolutely new to credit. There's cards for folks like that as well. Then if you take it a step up, maybe you get at least 1% back in terms of cash back for each and every dollar spent. And that cash back, it's literal cold hard cash, and you can use it however you see fit. And apart from a specific cashback number, there's also cards that just earn rewards in general, but these rewards may be very specific to a certain store that you may shop at. For example, the Sephora credit card, you earn Beauty Insider points, and these reward points can be only redeemed for the most part at Sephora. On a very similar note, you may have store financing cards, where, for example, hey, if you're spending, just an example, like 10K on furniture, then maybe you'll have 0% for the next 5 years. And although you're not getting really any rewards back, that kind of is the incentive to sign up. The caveat may be that, hey, you can do this, but you can only shop with this card at said store. If you really look at the value of what rewards you're getting at a certain store, it may be more than 1% pure cold hard cash back. At the same time, that's pretty much up to you and your own preference. Based on what you're looking for, you really could choose any type of reward you want back. And a good example is even cryptocurrency. On the same wavelength of store cards, if you've ever seen anyone with a Delta card or a Hilton card, essentially they're going to be earning Delta Sky Miles for each and every dollar spent. And with the Hilton cards, maybe earning Hilton points to be redeemed for Hilton hotels. There are other ways to use these points within that currency, but the understanding is, hey, you're earning Delta miles to use for Delta flights and Hilton points to redeem with Hilton hotels. In the industry, these type of credit cards are known as co-brand credit cards, where the issuer may be American Express, which is true for Delta and Hilton, but the brand itself may be something different. An example of this is if you look at the Southwest Airlines co-brand credit card, it's issued through Chase Bank. The fun fact is that these miles, typically they're known to be redeemed within their own ecosystems, but you're also able to redeem, depending on the program, for other things like a Samsung phone, for example. Whether this is worth it or not is going to be up to you. Typically speaking, the best cards in the industry, the creme de la creme if I may, are going to be cards where you earn points that are super flexible. And what that really means is they could be redeemed, let's say, for cash back. They can be redeemed on an internal portal for said bank. They could also be transferred, let's say, to certain programs such as airlines, hotels. In other words, there's ways to redeem these points, not just for pure cashback or a fixed use case, but in a myriad of ways. The interesting thing about these cards is that, let's say, the partners you can transfer these points to, they may not be the same. There may be some overlap, but it's not necessary that they're going to match one to one. So in other words, if you have a card from Capital One versus Citi versus Amex versus Chase, that doesn't mean that all the partners are going to be the same, but there may be specific partners which you're looking for a certain type of redemption, whether it's now or in the future. And so your strategy may be saying, hey, let me go accumulate more points with that card because it has a partner for where I want to redeem my points for. Simply put, whatever you're looking for, it's definitely achievable. How you get there is really going to come down to your credit card strategy. So if you're interested in that type of content, drop a like, subscribe, and let's keep it going. Tactically speaking, I'm going to share the exact play-by-play and the logic that I was thinking through for you to get this result or a similar result or really with that expert level kind of knowledge, you can do pretty much anything you want. So, with that being said, I'm going to share hands on keyboard and let's get straight into it. The context that's important to understand here when we look at what's in front of us here, and I know it's a lot for someone who would be new, and I get it. Basically, there's airlines on the left here, and all of these airlines, generally speaking, there's three major alliances. They're going to be your Star Alliance, SkyTeam, and One World. And within them, as you can kind of see, like, hey, these airlines slash programs are kind of related to each other by being a part of this bigger alliance. And that goes for these three alliances. And what's important to notice here at the top is that there's these different banks slash issuers where basically if you have certain cards under that bank slash issuer, you can transfer your points at these certain ratios to those partners. So a very quick example is, let's say, hey, you spend $1 and you're getting a point for every dollar spent on a certain American Express card, and you're specifically earning membership reward points under their program. And you can transfer those points at a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you have 5,000 points, you can transfer 5,000 of them to Chris Flyer, aka Singapore Airlines' program name. In my booking scenario, I basically was dealing with my Capital One Venture X credit card, where basically you're earning Venture X miles, which can be redeemed in different ways, with one of them being booking through Capital One's internal travel portal. This is what the Capital One travel portal looks like, where you can book flights, hotels, rental cars, all with the miles that you're earning through your card, and you can also just pay for them organically with your card even if you don't have enough miles. And I've already pre-filled this where we're going from Dallas to Phoenix at a future date, but it is the same route that I took for that same seat we saw in the beginning of this video. And it was a non-stop flight, and I'm just doing one way for our example. When the results load, I did take an American Airlines flight, and that matters because I'm seeing Spirit and Frontier. But what I do want to point out over here is that, let's say, and on this portal specifically how it works, is that let's say it's $49, in general, and you say, hey, let's continue for 49 bucks. The value of your miles on this portal is 1 penny a point, and that's very specific. So in other words, if it's $49, it's 4,900 miles. And if we go back to our actual results, if we now, let's just say, hey, American Airlines only, and we do a similar flight, so in this case, 205 bucks, 10:58 p.m., 11:36 p.m. locally you arrive, continue for 205, and very similarly, as you can see here, it's basically saying 205 and 47 cents is the equivalent price. And so at 1 penny a point, this is how many miles you would need to get this much in value. To trade 20,000 miles for $200, when you kind of know, okay, hey, how does this work and other use cases, 9 out of 10 times, it's not going to be the optimal scenario. It's an option, but it's not the best option in my personal opinion. So the logical train of thought that's going through my mind is there's 20,000 miles in my account, and I'm trying to book an American Airlines flight specifically. What I do know is that I'm able to transfer my venture miles to certain partners. But if you look at the list, American Airlines is not a partner with Capital One. But coming back to what we were talking about earlier, there's partners within alliances. And very specifically, American Airlines is a part of the same alliance as British Airways, and British Airways is a partner with Capital One. So with that understanding, I was looking into, okay, hey, what if I search up the same flight from Dallas to Phoenix, and let's see exactly on that same date, how much would that cost? Or what would that look like? And so it's one way only. And we were looking at an economy flight, it was 20,000 miles to get that 200 bucks in value. So let's just go ahead and get flights and see what our results are. Here are the results for that page. And specifically, this same flight that's leaving at 10:58 p.m. over here, if we see this 7 left economy and we click this, we'll see how many miles it could cost us. And over here at the bottom, we can see it's 16,000 avios plus $5.60 in taxes and fees. Simply put, this same flight would have cost us 20K on Capital One's portal, and it's costing us 16,000 avios with British Airways. We're definitely not done yet there's a few callouts I need to mention. Using the same example, the first thing I want to call out is, let's say, hey, we need 16,000 miles only versus 20,000 to do this redemption. The thing is, when you do that transfer from Capital One to British Airways, whether it's British Airways or pretty much any other program ever, it's basically one-way traffic. What that means is when you do that transfer out, you can't go backwards. In other words, you can't go from British Airways back to Capital One, or if you do Capital One to Turkish Airlines, you can't go backwards from Turkish Airlines back to Capital One, etc. The second call out is that let's say, hey, there's a possibility to use your Capital One miles at 1 penny a point to book, let's say, a business class flight. And that's well and good if that's how you want to use the miles. Simultaneously, if you transfer them out with the same issue of, hey, it's one way traffic only to, let's say, British Airways again, in the same flight example we're going over, if you look carefully, there was no availability for that award redemption. So the second call out is essentially make sure that you're looking for award availability first before doing that transfer. The third item is that when we look at the taxes and fees, they're $5.60. And I know that's a fact because it is a domestic flight and we're also taking American Airlines metal, even though we're booking it through British Airways' platform. The important thing here is that if you're going internationally, there may be different fuel surcharges, taxes, where instead of $5.60, maybe it's a similar level of miles and for a similar distance, but somewhere else, especially if you're going like country to country from, let's say, Britain to America, those taxes and fees could be, let's say, $200, $300 or even more. It just depends on the route. So your miles are getting a lot of value, assuming the taxes and fees don't eat into said value. The fourth call out before we get back into it is those ratios of 1 to 1, where one Capital One mile can be one British Airways Avios. There are certain periods where there's basically promotions for transfer bonuses. In other words, there may be times where, hey, there's a 20% boost if you're transferring your Capital One miles to Avios with British Airways. So if you have, let's say, 10,000 Capital One miles, that would be equivalent to 12,000 British Airways Avios. If we translate that math into English, we're basically saying instead of spending 20K on Capital One's portal, if we actually transfer 13,000 points and change with that 20% multiplier, then you'd have 16,000 British Airways Avios. And with those 16,000, you can basically get this flight by paying an extra $5.60 in taxes and fees. The super important thing here is that usually when it comes to point transfers, they need to be done in increments of 1,000. It depends on the issuer, but what that means is for this 13,000 and change Capital One miles that we need to transfer over, really it would need to be 14,000 miles that we need to send from Capital One. And yes, there would be a few remaining miles in your British Airways account, but at that point it could be used for a future redemption or just sitting there for X amount of time. But the point is, this is more of a call out. One more before now, let's get back into it. If we look at a quick example of business class pricing, so there's 7 left on this flight. It costs 32,000 avios, and for let's say economy, and it is a different time, but just to compare, 16K avios. So basically, for double the cost, you can get business if that's your choice. From here, we're going to enter expert mode. And when you're looking at me, I consider myself an expert in credit card points optimization in terms of actually earning the points and how you can maximize different strategies to earn even more points. But when it comes to not earning points or like earning money, it's about deploying capital, or in this situation, how do you best redeem said points for the max value? And that's something that I personally am getting better at. And I'm documenting this as kind of the start of my journey of figuring out more and more and more. And so I'm going to share basically what I've understood and learned because I accidentally booked the seat that we saw in the beginning of this video. And I was spending so much time on figuring out like, how did I do that? How can I replicate it? How can I do it again? And how can I share it with the world? Because there's videos just like this on YouTube, which is where I exactly learned the information I know today. With all that being said, I'm going to show you what I've learned, and there's probably a better way of doing exactly what I'm about to show you. But when you see this step by step, it's a little arduous, but it definitely can give you the results that you're looking for. So first things first, when we see this same route, Dallas to Phoenix on this date, one way only, the class here, if you see this carefully, there's first, business, club, and economy. And so even if I click first, let's see what happens when I see get flights. We basically see how it's called out here as economy and business class. But the fact is, now if we kind of take this American Airlines AA2245, I'm going to copy paste this particular actual, you know, airline plus like what it is, and you can go to like kind of just Google this, for example. So let's actually do that in real time. So when I put this into Google and I say, let's say, airplane over here, you're basically seeing on this site, flightaware.com, and this is just kind of me figuring this out in general. So if we see this, okay, hey, this flight, it's from Burbank to Phoenix, and it's not the same, Dallas to Phoenix, but the point is, this particular aircraft number for American Airlines, what is the actual aircraft type. So if you see this, it's an Airbus A319. And now what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put this Airbus A319 and I'm going to look exactly at the seat map. And the reason this matters, and I'm using seatguru.com, and it's not like sponsored or anything, I'm just Googling it. You can kind of see like, okay, hey, the 319 exists. And if you see this, there's a first section, there's a main cabin extra section, and then there's main cabin. And the reason this matters is because what they say is first class over here, basically we were seeing the equivalent on our British Airways results as business. We're going to take another quick second example here because it's something I learned the hard way. So American Airlines AA0187, right? So if I go ahead and copy this, and then I go onto the same site and I paste it, and I search, right? It basically comes back as, sorry, we're unable to find any result that match your criteria. And the reason is you have to take out the zero. It sounds very simple, but that's exactly what you got to do. So when you see this AA187, it does load as expected, but those zeros, they're going to get you. So don't be surprised. I just wanted to share this really quick. So now that we're here on this AA187 example, if we scroll down, now we're going to see, okay, hey, this is a Boeing 737-800. And we're going to go and see what this looks like in our seat maps. So this is the seat map for the Boeing 737-800, and there's two different layouts. And over here, even though British Airways has business, there is your first class, and then you have your main cabin extra, main cabin, etc. So here's the actual aircraft I personally was on, and it was a Boeing 777-200. And what you notice here, funny enough, there's no first class. It's just like business, and then I guess more business, and premium economy. Then it goes to main cabin extra, and otherwise. Point of the story being, I was seat 5A. And over here it says business, flat bed. It's a standard business class seat that transforms into fully lie flat bed, etc. And so this side is pretty cool and giving you like other insights about choosing certain seats. The point is, this is exactly how, if I had the knowledge prior, I would have looked for this plane. It was totally an accident, and this is exactly how I did it, step by step. If you came this far, I want to say thank you. At the same time, I'm definitely learning from my side. I've used points and miles for economy type of reasons, whether on the hotel side or airline side. And internationally, if you ask me, have I traveled business or first class yet? No, I haven't, officially, yet. And that will happen. And the point is, I'm learning more about these redemptions, and there's an ocean of information and granularity slash real heavy details, which could also change in snap of a finger overnight. And points value, when they call them devaluations or how far your miles can stretch, things change in different programs suddenly, unbeknownst to yourself, unless you're kind of constantly up into the news or doing the research. And so in the end, I'll do my best for summarizing kind of my learnings over time on the channel, as well as cover other topics as we do. So with that, I want to say thanks again. Subscribe, drop a like, all the good things. With that, I'll see you soon enough. Thanks for coming to the end. Peace for now.